Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Gail Carson. Welcome to Living Regret Free, a program that shows you how to live a better and more joyful life. As an added bonus, I invite you to listen to an introduction to my Mindset Matters program, which ties into this so well. Go to www.sobmindset.com. It's free, and I know you will enjoy it. If you'd like to contact me personally, drop me a line at gailcarson13@gmail.com or go to my website, www.spunkyoldbroad.com, and sign up for my weekly newsletter. Hi, everybody. This is Gail Carson, and I want to encourage you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Spunky Old Broad. But I also have a terrific guest for you today on our Living Regret Free show. Very unusual, and I think you'll find this interesting. We have Suzie Mills, and Suzie is an Air Force veteran who harnessed the leadership and determination she developed in the military to open a yoga studio, Honest Soul Yoga, in 2013 in Alexandria. Honest Soul Yoga grew out of Mills' experience with yoga as a source of personal empowerment and physical restoration following her time in the Air Force Reserves and deployment to Afghanistan. When her first attempts to lease a professional space did not receive approval, she persevered, redesigning her own basement into a studio space and developing branding and marketing materials. And of course, the business quickly expanded and allowed her to open a studio just outside Fort Belvoir and hire several other instructors. So over half of Honest Soul employees are members of the military, veterans, or military spouses, which is fabulous, who also attest to the restorative power of yoga. So with her friend and business partner, Julia Lopez, today, Suzie has expanded Honest Soul Yoga to new locations and driven their online company, Practice Everywhere, to new horizons, bringing digital movement and meditation to subscribers across the globe. Oh, Suzie, I'm tired. It's so funny because, I won the Silver Sneaker as well. I was one of the 10 finalists out of 200,000 for the Silver Sneakers Fitness Award. But the one thing I never did well was yoga. I do stretch, but I just never did yoga well. So let's ask some really important questions to you. First of all, tell us about your transition from Air Force to civilian life. Was that challenging for you, or did it seem so natural?
Well, thank you, Dr. Carson, for having me on your show. I'm very excited. So my transition from Air Force to civilian life is very interesting because as an Air Force reservist, I was constantly taking the uniform on and off and transitioning through the entire 6 years that I was in the military. My biggest challenge with transitioning was actually after my deployment to Afghanistan, where I worked on the flight line. So I worked with airplanes and not in the air, just on the ground. But it was a very super stressful experience where we were just, it was crazy. And transitioning immediately, getting off the plane, taking off the uniform, and then going back to my civilian job where I actually worked with IT, and it was a desk job and it was quiet. It was like the most eerie experience because I was so used to just noise all the time, whether it was noise from the airplanes or just all the things that we were experiencing in Afghanistan to just quiet. And I had actually a really hard time transitioning. And that's actually what led me to find yoga eventually, not right away. But I knew probably the most eerie thing about transitioning was in the military, you have a community and you have a group of individuals that you are working on the same mission, and it's the mission. And then when you go back to civilian life, for me, it was like a different kind of mission, but not a mission. And there was no camaraderie that I was used to. And so I was seeking community and seeking like-minded individuals that were having the same experience as me. And I think that's what it comes down to, is like, do other people have the same experience as you? And that's funny that I found yoga almost accidentally from that.
Well, that is because, usually people, of course, do find their way into yoga in a lot of different ways, that's for sure. And one of my friends who's a nurse, uh, and she's still working, she's working at a university as in their health department. And she never did yoga before, and she started doing it, and she just loves it because she said it's so tranquil and it's so soothing. And of course, it's so funny because when I first experienced yoga, and I'm talking about, oh my gosh, 60 years ago I started. My sister did it, and she fell asleep on the floor. And I did it, and the instructor said, okay, everybody relax except Gail, because my mind was going a mile a minute. But, how did you navigate all these different challenges that you ran into? And I can appreciate what you're saying with the noisy and busyness and teamwork of the military, and then going to IT, which is a very isolated kind of thing, I mean, what were some of the challenges? How did you navigate them?
Well, my background, my career was in IT, and it was funny. I got out of IT because I'm like, I'm too social for this job. I need people. Well, for me, navigating the challenges of both operating a civilian job and a military was honestly, at the time, I don't think I navigated it very well. And for me, fitness was always my outlet, and kind of working really hard to be able to kind of let go. Because I'm also a busy mind, like even to this day, busy mind. I have a lot of tools that I've developed over the years, but that's always my challenge, is the busy mind. And so for me, getting out of the military and transitioning and seeking the community, and also something for my body. And funny, my experience with yoga was not the same. I actually ended up in a power yoga class where they kicked my butt, and I was sweating. And I heard that you were supposed to bring a towel, and I brought like a washcloth sized towel, and I'm like slipping and sliding and like going crazy. I'm like, what did I just show up for? And I remember thinking like, oh my God, that was the first time that I didn't pay attention to what was going on between my ears, because I was so worried about my body and just trying to survive. And so for me, throughout the years and as I've grown, is coming back to my body and coming back to the tools that I have developed over the years, like learning how to breathe, learning how to pause, learning how to move my body when I'm feeling anxious is how I've always navigated things, and just keep learning more and more about myself.
Well, tell us about your experience as an entrepreneur, and specifically a female veteran entrepreneur. You don't have one studio, you have several studios, and in a short period of time. So you evidently knew what you were doing, and you've been very successful at it. So what have been the key things that you've done? Because our people who are listening, this is a living regret-free show. You're supposed to be living your happiness and your dreams. So tell us about that.
Well, my dad was a business owner, and I like to think an entrepreneur as well. And I watched our family launch a business. I even remember going and like setting up an LLC. Like I was like 10. I don't know why I thought that was so cool. But I watched my parents build a business and then close their business. But that just lit something in me. And my high school graduation, we had to do this exit interview, and I was like, I will be the CEO of a tech company. And so entrepreneurship, I think, is just in my blood, and something I've always sought. And my dad, as a child, would always say, like, find something you love and then figure out how to make money doing it. And I had been searching that. And even when I was deployed in Afghanistan, that was kind of my pivotal moment where I was like, okay, I don't want to keep living my life as it is. I don't want to be in this IT job. I don't know if I want to keep doing the military thing, but there's got to be something else out there for me that I'm passionate about. And it was 2007, 2008 that I declared that I was like, I want to find passion in something that excites me and that I can grow and build. And it's so funny, like taking that first yoga class was like that big moment where at the end of the class where I'm like dripping sweat, I'm like, I think I just figured it out. Like, I think I can take this yoga experience in this community that there's a need for it in a bigger way. And so I I've always been searching, and then partnering with my business partner, Julia, we realized like, no, we want to grow more businesses and bigger businesses. So for me as an entrepreneur first, like that's just, I don't know any other way. And I knew, and I'm also a risk taker, and you talk about living regret free. Like for me, I always make decisions and just trust that I made the right decision and keep moving forward. And as a female veteran entrepreneur, I've always obviously known I'm a female entrepreneur, but I didn't really start owning the veteran hat until recently in the past couple of years. And once I started doing that, I found that so many different opportunities presented itself in terms of reaching out to more people and connecting. And I think at the end of the day, I'm in a community style business, and being able to have that camaraderie that I mentioned earlier, like, oh, they can identify with me. So naturally, a lot of military members and military families find our studios and our online studio or online yoga company because they feel that they have a connection with us. So it's been very interesting. And it's also, I've gotten invited to some really cool stuff being a female veteran entrepreneur as well.
So what made you join the military in the first place?
That's a funny question because I kind of just did it on a whim. I had a backward experience. I knew I didn't have the finances to go to college. And so I actually put myself through tech school while still in high school. And I started doing college courses in high school because I knew I needed a career after graduation. I knew I needed something. And that's what led me to IT. And I actually got a fantastic job right out of high school with no college degree. I was actually making more money than my friends, which was unbelievable. But I knew I was missing something, and I was in a male dominated field, and I knew I needed to have just something else. I needed to have more experience. And someone told me about the military and the reserves, and it was something that I could do in addition to my civilian job. And also it would help me pay for college. I would hopefully see the world a little bit and really get out of my bubble of from the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. And it did just that. It was the most beneficial decision I've ever made. And while at the time I wasn't sure why I was joining the military, looking back, I'm like, wow, if I hadn't joined the military and I hadn't gone to Afghanistan, I wouldn't be where I am today. And so it was kind of one of those things. I was like drawn to the recruiter. I was like, okay, yeah, sign me up. And I thought I was going to do a completely different job, but I ended up loading airplanes, which was fine.
Yeah, totally different. That's for sure.
Yeah, I had like 2 different jobs that I was constantly doing.
So how has the current COVID situation impacted your studios? Because I know that I'm not going to the gym anymore because I'm immune compromised. So I'm very careful where I go and what I do, and I work out at home and so forth. But how has it impacted you?
Well, hugely. I still remember the day, March 16th, when we made the decision to close our studios.
I remember the day too.
Yeah.
I was in San Diego, and I was doing the New Media Summit. I was one of the icons in podcasting, and I flew back to Miami from San Diego, and I was going to go back to San Diego the next week to do a speech, and the next day they closed everything down.
Yeah, it's one of those days that I don't think we'll ever forget. I was actually in San Antonio, and on March 6th, we had just opened our first national Honest Soul Yoga. And so Julia and I were in San Antonio, where she is, and we opened our doors. We had a beautiful grand opening, and then 10 days later, we had to close the doors. And so we shut all of our studios down. And it's interesting during COVID, the beginning, because Virginia was operating much different than Texas. And so we had to navigate a business that was across the country from each other, but we needed to have the same communication. And so we made the decision then, and we immediately pulled some extra money that we had to come up with a fund for our staff, because all of these women were going to be out of work, and a lot of them are military spouses and provide for their families. So we scrapped together some money to do a little fund just to carry us over, and we stayed closed. We reopened Texas in June, and so our brick and mortar is completely shut down. And to be honest, it's been crazy trying to rebuild. We have one issue with a landlord who refused to work with us. So we're potentially in a lawsuit with one landlord, and another landlord worked with us, and we reopened one of our Northern Virginia locations, about to open our other Northern Virginia location. So we'll have 2 out of 3 open here in Northern Virginia. And then Texas has been open and doing okay since June. That landlord has been awesome. So It's not what I expected, that's for sure. Our business actually just did a financial review, and I started laughing. I was like, these numbers look so different than they did 6 months ago, a year ago. And it's a new normal. It's a new way of operating. And we've had to completely tip the business over and relaunch it from the ground up as if it was a brand new company. And we've had to change so many things just to survive. And I think we're in survival mode with our brick and mortar right now. And Practice Everywhere was always a business that we had been building to be a digital side. And that took the spotlight for during COVID. And we started building that up and launching our tech. And we're still building that up and getting that bigger and bigger. So yeah, it's been, I think I went through my hard times and like the depression of your business being shut down and not knowing if it would ever reopen, to now I'm like, okay, this is what we got. Let's see what comes next, and we'll figure it out as it comes along.
Well, it's funny that you should say that, because one of the things that I have said to everybody is that there is no new normal. There's just new. And that nothing's going back to the way it was, and you're going to have to figure it out. And that's exactly what you've just said, and that's exactly what you've been doing. So I commend you for that, because there's a lot of people that still have their head in the sand and believe everything's going back to normal, but it sure is not for a very long time. So what would you say that, has been the most rewarding part of owning Honest Soul Yoga and Practice Everywhere? I mean, what are some of the success stories within your own community?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a company that launched in my basement with a dream and just hoping that I can impact a couple people. And now it's truly touched the globe. Something interesting that I didn't plan for when I opened my business, but Pivot is my middle name. I pivot all the time, is the connection to the military. Like I said, when I first opened, I never called myself a veteran entrepreneur. I just called myself an entrepreneur. And opening up right outside Fort Belvoir and starting to see the people that were coming through our doors, especially military spouses, and then seeing military spouses take classes with us and then sign up to become a yoga teacher through us. And then we employ them. And then they move to another part of the country or the world, and they get to take the yoga that they learned from us everywhere. And so our network now has truly become global, and to see people make friendships in my studio and try yoga for the first time and then change their entire life because of a workout that they had for the first time has been honestly what has kept me going through COVID and the shutdown, is knowing that there were and still are so many experiences that people have had that have truly changed their life for the positive. And I'm forever grateful for that.
Oh, that's fabulous. So what advice would you give to those who want to keep a healthy mind, body, and soul with everything that's going on? Because there are a lot of people going through depression.
Mm-hmm. Well, honestly, what I do is make a date with yourself every day. And whether that is a date for 3 minutes to breathe a few moments, maybe it's a date to find a recipe that makes you really excited, or just make time to move your body. I know for me, I have 2 little kids. And so being in quarantine with 2 little kids and the business being crazy was so stressful for me. So for me, I have to always find something every day that brings me that peace, that joy, that happiness. And whether it's for sometimes just finding a recipe that I'm really excited about, or going for that walk, or running while my kid rides his bike. But just, I would say for your healthy mind, body and soul, is just making time for you, whether it's 1 minute or an hour or something.
So what advice would you give to people who are, facing challenges in their careers because they've been downsized or let go, finances because they don't have the money coming in, relationships because we know that domestic abuse goes up in these times, health because people are, like me. I mean, I'm immune compromised. I've been inside for 33 weeks. So what do you tell people to navigate all this stuff that's going on around them?
When I was deployed in Afghanistan, the biggest thing we had to do was pivot in the moment's notice. If something big was happening, we had to make a decision very quickly. And as a business owner and just a human, I've had to pivot so many times in my life, whether it's a very tiny little pivot or a massive changing your entire business, changing drastic things in your personal life. I think it's not being afraid to make that pivot. And that pivot is truly the C word, which is change, where most people are scared of. It's like change, like not being afraid of life not looking like what you imagine, but can you make your life feel like you wanted? Can you have the experiences and the feelings that make you feel like what you're dreaming of? And maybe it doesn't look the same way. So not being afraid to step out of your comfort zone and try something new, because you never know what it could lead to. And I think for me, that's been the biggest lesson in the past 6 months, is like these things that happen that I can't control, I can make decisions in the moment, and I can pivot, and I can change, and I can be open to what's coming next. So just be open and pivot.
So let's do this, because we've got about 5 minutes left. How is the best way for people to reach you, number one? And I don't know if you have a gift for anybody.
I do.
Oh, good. Okay. So where can they find you? How do they get in touch with you? What's your gift? Let's find out a little bit about that, Suzie.
So the great thing about COVID is my business is now global, and that's practiceeverywhere.com. And it is an on-demand. We have tons of videos online, and I teach a class called Power Fix. I'm going to make you sweat. I'm going to make you work, but also have fun. And we also have amazing instructors from all over the world with us. I want to give away a free month of our on-demand access. It's Yoga Month. Just put that in at practiceeverywhere.com under on demand, and you'll get access to a free month. And find me there, take my classes, and see what we're all about.
That sounds great. So really, then your website is practiceeverywhere.com?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's easy, folks, for you to remember, practiceeverywhere.com. So they would find you there. They can see if they like the kind of yoga that you do. And I assume that there you have several different forms of yoga that you do. Is that correct?
We do. We have everything from more chill classes that are a little more easygoing on the body to more intense workouts, because we're all about yoga, fitness, and meditation. So you'll have a little bit of everything to access.
Fantastic. Well, folks, I want to remind you to subscribe to our YouTube channel at spunkyoldbra.com. I want you to remember to go to my website, spunkyoldbra.com. You can certainly find our store there, my online courses at the university there. So there's lots of stuff for you there at the website as well. Suzie, we have just like a couple minutes left. Is there anything we haven't talked about that you think it's important for our listeners to know?
Well, let's see. It's so funny talking about the military and business and current life. I've been thinking a lot about just how our life experiences shape us, especially as entrepreneurs and business owners. And I mentioned earlier, one of my big pieces of advice for anybody is know when to pivot and know when to change. And I think something that's been really I've been working on is not being afraid of the hard stuff. And I think, like I said, the past 6 months has been all the hard stuff combined into a very short period of time. And just not running the other direction, running into things, letting things happen, and being able to take what you get as lessons, and knowing that every life experience is a new lesson, an opportunity for us to do something new and to grow.
Wow, that's a great example, and a great, just it's really true what you're saying, because I think it's important. But you've got such an advantage. You had an entrepreneurial dad. You watched and formed an LLC when you were 10. You went into the military and did something you've never done before, working on the flight crew. You put yourself through technical school and got a better job than if you had a college degree. Then you went back and you learned more things, and you started yoga as a therapy, really. I mean,
yeah.
Suzie, You have pivoted all your life.
That's why I said it's my middle name.
Yeah, in fact, there are people now saying, don't ever tell me about pivot again. I don't ever hear one word. But the important thing is, folks, listen to what Suzie has to say. Whatever business you're in, whatever you're doing with your life, whatever your family situation is, make sure that you do some form of exercise. If it's yoga, great. But the important thing is to do it because, that's what keeps you going.
Mhm.
So I want to thank you so much for being with us, Suzie. And I wish you only the best. And you're going to figure it out because you're someone who does. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Dr. Carson.
Hi, this is Dr. Gail, and I wanted you to know I have a whole bunch of other things to offer you. If you go to spunkyoldbroad.com, you will see an array of SOB stuff for sale and all our latest products and additions. If you're interested in getting on TV, I have a brand new course, Get on TV. And if you want to start your own business, you'll want my SOB Guide to Business Success. I know you'll love them all. I guarantee it.